What's cracking, people? It's your man Cousin T, aka the Alpha Wingman, representing high-level technicians operating globally and beyond. So listen, today I wanted to kick off a series that I have been wanting to do for quite some time, and I think that it's the sum of any gentleman's experience if he has been exposed to a variety of women of different backgrounds, classes, uh, social situations, and what happens is when you have experienced a range and a variety of different women, you start to catalog and you start to figure out patterns. And that's the most important factor into codifying those experiences so that you can relate them to other men. And full disclosure, I am definitely in the process of writing a book. And before BGS IBMOR, the master teacher, introduced the Octane series, I was putting together elements for a similar breakdown of the categories of women who stand out with distinction within the modern Western world. And there's some spillover into other aspects of the global community, but more specifically, how women can be categorized within with distinction in the modern Western world. But once BGS IBMOR introduced the Octane series, I was like, well, that's perfect. The way that he categorized the women based on the Insecure series gave a great basis for identifying specific patterns and specific attributes of the modern expression of female nature within our society. So, uh, needless to say, I was like, okay, I'm gonna depart from the version that I was gonna put together and focus on BGS's version because he made it so easy and it's so applicable. So, in that vein, I wanted to present this particular podcast series covering the Octane spectrum or the Octane model from the perspective of a seducer, aka male exotic entertainer, male exotic dancer, however you want to say it. But from a man who has the perspective of having interacted with the Octane levels throughout that spectrum and in no uncertain terms, to quote ARC, uh, exchanged orgasms with women from the entire Octane spectrum. But what a person with this perspective brings to this space, the select manosphere, is both sides. So if you remember the video that I posted briefly regarding a woman's representative, the two sides to a woman, and we'll cover that in this series, will be this: the marketing rep, who is what she presents to the outside world, basically the ego that allows her to navigate whatever space she's in, and her sex representative or her sex rep, which is who she is at her most raw and extremely expressive self, who she is at the core, and how she embraces her depths of femininity and the female nature when she allows it to run wild and free. So there are a lot of different perspectives and different angles that a person can approach this at. This is going to be my angle. So just to recap or to go over what the Octane model is, I'm going to go from one end of the Octane spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. And I'm being very specific with the use of the word spectrum and not necessarily levels, because it's all relative, right? The way in which a woman in the modern world, in this modern space, expresses herself or determines to navigate this modern space. It's just a matter of spectrum or positioning within the spectrum. And that's why this particular model is so useful, because it not necessarily depicts levels or, one type of person being more valuable per se than another. It's just a different variation on the theme of the feminine expression. So to get into it, we'll start with the diesel. So the diesel is basically what can be classified as the sex worker. Okay, and that's in the traditional or modern sense, which is your porn star, which is your stripper, which is your escort, which is your pay to play woman. And if I could summarize what I would identify her as in one word, that would be the predator. All right. And if I could offer a soundbite for what my overall perspective or my take is on a diesel woman, it would be this. I would quote a diesel woman as saying, "Men are pets." All right. Keep that in mind. Next, we have the 100 octane. And basically, this is your arm candy for the rich and the wealthy. This is the trophy wife. This is the IG model, or the current, fitness bunny, if you would. And if I could summarize the 100 octane in a couple words, that would be party favor. And if I could offer a soundbite that represents the 100 octanes mentality, it would be this: men are playthings. Moving on to the 92 octane. And basically, this is your corporate professional woman. She is career driven. She is the one who is put in middle management position. She is in the senior VP position, the executive leadership position, all the way up to the CEO or the figurehead of an organization, depending on what that organization's vision and direction for the future is. And the 92 octane is an interesting one. That'll be a fun one to go into. But basically, if I could summarize the 92 octane with a word, that would be professional. And if I could offer a soundbite for how the 92 octane views men, it would be this: men are subordinates. Keep that in mind. Next, we have the 89 octane. And this is a very interesting one. And in fact, for the 89 octane, I'm going to save that one for last. Out of all of these podcasts that I'll do covering the octanes, I think that that's the most interesting octane. But in the spectrum, the 89 octane sits between the 92 and the 87, which means that she's sort of able to code switch in between and float in between, with the mentality of someone who is homely, who can be domestic, who has the capacity for that, but also has the capacity to enter the workforce, to become a professional, to be upwardly mobile. And so there's this interesting interplay with the 89 octane that I'll get into further on in the series. If I could summarize the 89 octane with one word, that word would be producer. And if I could offer a soundbite for how the 89 octane views men, it would be this: men are partners. Last, we have the 87 octane, and that by far is one of the more interesting octane levels. It is the regional girl. It is the one who is classified as the ratchet. It's the country bumpkin. It is the woman who is at the level of simply doing domestic things. She is the one who's most likely to have babies. She is the one who is less likely to travel outside of her spectrum meaning her perception and perspective of the world is very short-sighted, and it's smaller than that of the other octanes. If I could summarize the 87 with one word, that word would be pedestrian. And if I could offer a soundbite for the 87 octane, it would be this: men are a come up. So what I will do is I'm going to highlight these particular octane positions similar to the way that I do with my missions on the Patreon side. And my Patreon subscribers on the journeyman and technician level will be familiar with this. I'm going to place a graphic of how I'm going to do this. And for the sake of example, I'm going to highlight an outlier. I would usually classify this particular case study under the 89 octane. However, there are always exceptions to the rule, and gentlemen, Tomiko Grimes is certainly exceptional. So here's the thing about it, okay? I've met 87s who can levitate chairs, right? I've met 92s who can open portals. I've met 100 octanes who can run through fire. And I've met 89s who could run a nation if she needed to. Let's just say that as far as the diesels, I'm debating whether or not I can even put the experiences that I've had with diesels on the YouTube side. So I'll try to clean that up and have one YouTube side, and I'll have a Patreon side. But here's my summation at the end of the day. Energy informs the language, and the spectrum of octane modes varies according to the language of a woman. And what I can really say is that the distinguishing factor between all five of the octane nodes or models would be a woman's aptitude, her attitude, her ambition, and her access. So without further ado, I'm going to briefly cover the outlier, Tomiko Grimes. Now, just to cover the specifics, Tomiko Grimes is a sports entertainment radio personality. She also does podcasts, and she is married to what I consider a blue-pilled NFL player. The reason why I classify her husband as blue-pilled is the following. Listen to this interview clip about her interacting with her husband to see what I mean.
I mean, first of all, I like the lady. Don't get it twisted.
Okay.
You as a married woman, I'm trying to bring the lady home every now
There
and
you
then.
go.
Okay,
One time for Brent. Go.
Let's be
One
clear.
time for the hubby.
But I no, we I get shut down.
You get shut down.
So my husband isn't into sharing me with anyone.
Now, further going into her breakdown, she identifies as female. Her height is 5'10". Her weight is around 140. And again, her octane grade, as I said earlier, is the 89/outlier. Now, the cool thing about a Miko Grimes type of woman is that if a masculine master gets a hold of a Miko Grimes, they could literally build a system that changes an environment within a given space. She is not only a producer, but she is a great manager of the household funds to the point where she established things and aspects and elements within her husband's financial portfolio that has allowed them to be able to give back to extended family members and those outside of their family. So this not only qualifies her, in my opinion, under the 8/8 rules for wifey material. I'll link that podcast in the description down below. But it makes her the ideal companion and queen bee roster position for a masculine master. that's all we're gonna have for this particular intro to the series today, gentlemen. Comment down below what you think and your thoughts and reactions and your experiences with the various Octane levels. Stay tuned for the first in the series to come up, which is going to be the Diesel in the series. And as always, this is your man, Cousin T, aka the Alpha Wingman, saying stay sharp and mission focused. Later.